fact, in a sense, very kindly was like, just confirming that we're recording, which we were not. So thank you, Sanskrit. So our mentors are amazing. And I would just say for you guys, just give you some quick examples. There are people like Sana. Sana is in her final year of her PhD at Yale. She's incredible, very warm, does her PhD in physics, particularly interested in cosmology. She's particularly interested, a lot of our physics research is, it's physics and at the intersection of machine learning and physics, where physics researchers, they're kind of broken into different groups. There's instrumentation researchers and people who are doing more data analysis. She's on the data analysis side. There's theory, of course, as well, which is incredible. People like Bhargav just finished his PhD at Columbia and did his PhD in economics, really particularly focused on labor economics. His students have just crushed it. One of his students had his research published in the Cornell Undergraduate Economic Review, which is an undergraduate journal when he was a junior. In fact, it's kind of funny because the journal then spoke to us and they're like, actually, we didn't know he was in high school. So they were like, they had to think a bit about their policies, but he was already published at that point. So we were like, haha. Anyways, there's really talented researchers. I'll talk a bit about the publication process in a second. If you're doing one of the publication programs, essentially there we have a full dedicated, we actually have 7 full-time team members working with students on publications. I was just looking at that. And so we're often looking at things like college or graduate level publications. There's also really rigorous high school level publications. All of them involve a peer review process. And based on your research, will help you identify what's a good fit. In talking with admission officers, so we do a lot of sessions. This year we did over 50 sessions with admission officers from places like Berkeley, MIT, liberal arts colleges. So what we've seen, Northwestern, what we've seen is that publication is a thing that no admission officer will tell you, hey, you need to get your research published. I think they're highly incentivized to not say that. But I think if you read between the lines, the admission officers, I think, tend to value external recognition of the work that you've done, in large part because admission officers are generalists. This is a bit of my take now. And it's difficult then sometimes for them to assess research quality. So they look for external validation. So doing a program like Lumiere, where it's your research, we're very rigorous. We have a relationship with most admission offices that can help. But also getting published, I think, can be valuable as well. Let me talk a little bit about, essentially, by the way, in terms of areas of research, you can do research in pretty much any field with Lumiere at this point. We haven't yet identified any mentors in underwater basket weaving, but outside of that, I think we can, pretty much cover what you're interested in. And I'll talk about this in a second, but when we look back at our data as to what makes a successful experience for students, one of the core criterion is mentor-student match in terms of their research area of interest. And in general, students then have a good time in the program. I think our average rating is a 9.25 out of 10 in terms of students' experience. So that's, I think, pretty positive. And that match is really, really important. Just a little bit on this timeline, so you have it. And you guys are probably at different stages. But if we're talking to you, then you're still in the process. We'll say that way. So we will invite a select number of students to interview. I think on average we invite about half of students to interview of who apply. We receive an application decision after that. So the interview is both for us to learn about you, so we can figure out who's a good fit, but it's also evaluative on our side to get a sense of, do we think that you would be successful in the program? And part of, I think, why admission officers are really excited to talk to us is because they know the quality of the students who do the program. And so that's a bit of the process of the application. If you are accepted and you're not on financial aid, we ask you to put down a deposit. This is just to claim your spot in the program. We then come back to you with who we think could be a good mentor match. That's usually within 7 days. And then if the mentor feels like a good fit, it's about 90% of the time it is a good fit, is what we've seen given our data. then you would say, great, you put down your full tuition, and then we give you a welcome packet and you get started in your cohort start date, which is early March if it's the spring, and then early June if it's the summer. If at any point, by the way, you're like, hey, like this mentor is great, but actually my interests have changed a little bit, or you gave me Bargov, who's really interested in labor economics, but I want to do behavioral economics, whatever it might be. We will work with you to make sure you have a good mentor match. And my perspective on the program, just so you know, is that at the end of the day, we do so much to make it a good experience for you. We have, a full program management team working with you. We have this publication team. We have a writing center we set up to help support you on your writing and give you feedback. But the mentor is going to be the most important person. It was certainly my experience doing research. Who your advisor is going to matter the most. And so that's a really important match that we make for you. And we're partners with you in that process. Okay. So I talk a little bit about this, but essentially the most important thing is research and academic fit. That's the most important fit. We're looking at personality as well. In general, students tend to really like their mentor. They're rating them 9.25 out of 10. So, and what we've seen is that in conversation with admission officers, which we mentioned we do a lot of, the most common thing we hear is that they want to see how the research connects to you and your interest. So that's really what matters, is like, how is this an extension of who you are? And like, of those 8 students that got into Harvard that I mentioned this past fall, I would say for all 8 of them, but the research topics are really different. Like, we had astrophysics, we had history, we had economics, very different fields. We had some in business, but what was consistent was all of their research was in line with who they were as people. And so that connection was very clear. So when they were writing about it in their personal statement or in the extracurriculars, it didn't feel kind of like a random add-on, which I think is what you want to avoid. And it felt a bit more like, okay, this is really tightly connected to who I am and what I want to do in college. So that's an important fit, by the way. So that's why this mentor fit is really important, because we want it to be very in line with your interests. Okay. Here's a little bit on some of the programs offered. Essentially, of course, if you're on financial aid, then you're on, there's no cost to the program. The Breakthrough Scholars Program is the same thing as the financial aid program. Individual research program, that's 12 weeks. It's our core program. Students' end goal is a college-level academic paper. Publication program, which I think about 40% of students do, is focused on submitting to publication or college-level journal. The fellowship is oriented around submitting usually to a higher level journal or to a competition like ICEF. And then our professor program is a program we're piloting actually this summer, where you're working with faculty members on research. And that's similar oriented to publication, a little bit less time with the mentor, but similar types of kind of output as well. I mentioned the financial aid program. In 2022, we launched our nonprofit, the Lumiere Research Inclusion Foundation. We call those students the Breakthrough Scholars, if you see that term thrown around. Can you ask a question about number of years you had the program? We've had the program for 5 years. So this is the 5th year. I think we've had 30 cohorts of students in that time. But really amazing actually to see. Again, this is just our commitment to financial inclusion. I would just say that, yeah, we were able to disperse over $1 million in financial aid to 352 students. We're looking at close to 20%, if not more than 20% of our student body will be on full financial aid this upcoming year. So that's something we're, just really committed to, and proud of the fact that the whole team is really proud that we can do this for students. Okay, so I see a few questions. I will try to address those. And then here's just some quick things on eligibility. I would say that, if your family's making, it says $50,000. I think if your family's making less than $80,000 per year, you're definitely eligible. In general, if you feel like you have financial need, we're happy to support you in that way. So I see a few questions. Let me just quickly address those questions. Teresa asked a question around genetics or cytology, and then so access to a lab, it sounds like be limited. Yeah, so great. So Excellent. So Teresa, so really good question. I would say we have a lot of students who do research in genetics, and there are really three types of papers that are most common to be written. So one is more of a data analysis paper, so taking some existing data and then doing some type of analysis around that. That could be simple data analysis, could be something like machine learning, applied machine learning. Another is a simulation experiment. So there you're doing some type of simulation to identify what you might expect as an outcome. And then the final is your point, a literature review or meta-analysis, which can be very effective. And by the way, like I would say that I think there's a little bit, some people say, oh, maybe is that research, if you will. And I think it certainly is research, and something I did in my PhD. It's something that of our students who get admitted, about half of the kind of top universities, half of them are doing essentially a literature review. So it's a very common type of research. And then we will support her in getting access to like any research article she needs. So we're really, we get a lot of access there, and we'll support her in that process. Okay. Yeah, I see a few questions about interview invitation. Yeah, so the interview invitation process can take up to 1 to 2 weeks. And so we're just reviewing. We have a lot. I think we had 600 students apply in the past 2 weeks. We have a lot of students. We're not going to invite everyone to interview. So if you're in this process, you're still being evaluated. And so you have, if you're in this call, then we'll get back to you. Okay, so talk a little bit about the timeline. So what are we doing here? Like what can you expect in the program? The core thing, by the way, is that you're going to be meeting with your mentor at least once per week over the course of these 12 weeks. This is for the individual research program. It's really broken into 2 sections. So the first section is about building out your understanding of the field and identifying, okay, what area do I want to address in this field? What's the research question I'm going to get at? And the second half is actually executing on the paper itself. That means doing the research, doing the data analysis, understanding what's going on. It's really a process of building out your understanding of the program, or sorry, of the research itself. And that, again, could take different forms. We recognize, and I think this is certainly my experience as well as a researcher, that it can be kind of daunting, honestly, to do research, especially if you're a first-time researcher. So one way to make that a bit easier is to break it into smaller, I think, more tangible parts. So we have a few deadlines throughout the program to keep you up to speed. The first few are the most important: identifying a research question by week 3, creating a research proposal, building out the outline of the research. And then the second half is about then executing on that research itself. So that's the second half of that research. The fellowship is similar. It's 30 sessions. It's a bit longer. It's about 6 months. It's a very similar like prep execute structure, but just a little bit more time on the prep, a little bit more time for if you want to build up like some technical skills or whatever, we can support you on that. Second half is and then doing the research itself. So let's talk a little bit about what the program is and also what the program is not. I think it's important to be kind of eyes wide open. So let's talk about what the program's not. So first, we're not a tutoring program. So we are really excited to help you explore and build. And we expect you to be doing a significant amount of independent work. So on average, people put in between 5 to 10 hours of independent work. And so we are looking for students who are excited by that. We will definitely be with you every step of the way. We're really supportive, but there will be times where you'll need to do independent work and independent learning yourself. Students will end up with different types of projects at the end. That's important just to note, because if you're doing a project in computer science, or you're doing a project in economics or in history, the type of project you might do could look different. And that's okay. It's great. What the program does provide is really, I think, world-class guidance in terms of supporting you to do research. We will meet you where you are in terms of your background. So if you have more background in the field, we're going to move more quickly. If you have less, then we'll spend more time to help you build up. It's highly individual, which I think is a huge advantage for you, in that you're going to be given really work at your level and helping you identify a project that you can execute on. And then yeah, honestly, like for me and for Druva, we're really excited about the prospect of this creating a generation of researchers. And that can mean you doing your PhD down the future. That can mean you just knowing the tools of research. So we want this to be a fun experience. We want it to be exciting for you. And hopefully you end it saying, hey, like, this is something that I like doing. Or you might say, hey, like, I like doing this, but I don't like this specific topic. That's also fine. And certainly a reasonable thing for you guys to end up with. Okay. Some student expectations. So this is really important. I would say the broad theme here is that we are treating you as young adults, as researchers, and we have expectations that are in line with that. So that means that we expect you guys to be on it in terms of responding to us and responding to your mentors in particular. If you have something come up, that's fine. We're like, it's actually quite a flexible program. You take a week off, 2 weeks off, we get it. Just let us know in advance, and particularly let your mentor know in advance. So you need to take a few weeks off. We expect you to show up on time to meetings. I expect you guys maybe come to meetings. I would say best practice like 2 to 3 minutes in advance of the scheduled time. And if you need to reschedule, also understood, but let us know in advance. We have deadlines, and we also have some expectations around quality of work. This is all about making you successful. With a program, and your mentor will set deadlines. And so we expect you to take those seriously. If you need an extension, then you can talk to us about that. And then any delays will lead to a kind of lower final grade. There's a kind of a grading process at the end of kind of the research you've done. And many students attach that when they're applying to college when they finish the program. So this is a bit on student expectations. We also have some parent expectations. Yeah. So thank you, parents. By the way I think about the parent program relationship is that I see us as essentially partners in the program. And so we are looking to you to help us understand how things are going. We, of course, have a really deep knowledge on the research side and on what's happening in the meeting and in between the meetings and specific deadlines. But sometimes they're just dinner table conversations that we don't have access to. So if your student's like, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing, or I'm really loving working with this mentor, the more you can keep us up to date on that, we would love that. And we'll reach out to you at the midterm for the program to get on a call and also talk to us a bit about what you're seeing. And we'll share with you. Of course, we have a lot of information as well on our side, maybe more in terms of the project. We'll share with you what's going on as well. But we just see you as partners. And so thank you in advance if you accepted the program and you do it. For your partnership. So we have this really cool partnership that we're really proud of with UC San Diego. This is a credit partnership that we've had now for over a year. Essentially, I think it's a reflection of UC San Diego saying, hey, like, we've seen a lot of students at Lumiere. We've been really impressed with the outcomes. And we want to be able to offer a extended studies credit. It's actually what's called a post-baccalaureate credit for students. And so it is a something that you can essentially avail yourself of if you want this credit when you've completed the program. And it's something that we'll talk a bit more about that kind of down the line. So there's some processing fee as well. It goes to UCSD for that. There's a grade report with that, but it's really just, I think, it's a partnership we're proud of, and it's really great that we're able to offer this for students for whom it's useful. So here's some just quick example students that you can get a sense of. They're people like, these are talk about publications. So people like Ojas has just crushed it, did research around Alzheimer's. He had family actually affected by Alzheimer's, was particularly interested in it. Was a winner of the MIT Think competition, which he used, essentially submitted his Lumiere research project towards, which is this, by the way, if you're based in the US, MIT Think is like a awesome program, and I highly recommend it. The winners get flown out to MIT. There's like 10 each year. It's a really great experience. And I think, can do really well. People like Alexandra, she did research also, more biology related, focusing on mRNA vaccines for breast cancer. She was published in a high school level journal, which is very rigorous and a testament, I think, to the work she did. And then there's people like Azudian, who did research I mentioned earlier, got published in the Cornell undergraduate economic review. So some examples there. And then our students tend to do really well. I'll talk a bit about some of our stats in a second of where students got in. I'm sure. And if you want, by the way, if you want like a really detailed report on that, if you go to our website and go to the admission report and download that, we essentially list every single university students were admitted to. You can see just a bit of the and some of the data analysis we did in terms of how students use the research and their likelihood of getting in vis-a-vis kind of the regular population. People like Lily, I think Lily's a really great example. So she did research in particle physics. Her mentor was at U Chicago. What happened there, I think it's just a reflection of how admission officers value research, which they do. The admission officer at Princeton actually called up Lily's mentor at U Chicago, and we're like, hey, like we saw this research and we're really interested. Can you tell us a little bit about Lily as a person? And then they said, hey, like, yeah, Lily's great. I was really impressed with her throughout the program. And here's kind of research she did. And then she was ultimately admitted to Princeton. So that's just an example of like, I think admission offices taking research seriously. Now, in that case, I think that's most admission officers are not calling up all mentors, but we do seen that. We've seen the admission officers take the research quite seriously. Ria, similar at UPenn right now. Theo is another good example. He's at UC Berkeley and is just crushing. He's doing a bit more of an economics program and economics international relations strategy related work. Students tend to do really well in terms of publication. I mentioned we have this full-time team just thinking nonstop about where you can showcase your research. So we have students who have published at Stanford Journal of Science and Technology, MIT Think. We have students who have had research published at Brown, students who have competed and won at ISEF. We had one student recently, if you go to my LinkedIn, we have one student recently, it's like 2-3 weeks ago, who finished the program, is now at Tufts as an undergrad, and then his research got published, his Lumiere research got published in one of the top AI conferences, which is awesome. So a lot of students extend on their research even into college, but most students can contain it to high school. The publication process, by the way, is a pretty extensive process. We're working with you to submit to different college or high school level journals. All of these journals are external to us. I think that's a really important thing. So because they are credible external validations of the work that you've done. If you're in the individual program, not in the publication program, we'll definitely point you in the right direction in terms of publications, and happy to support you as well there. But they're not as oriented towards publication; they're more oriented towards just finishing the research. And the publication programs are more kind of in depth of like, hey, like let's try to get this to the publication finish line. So there's a variety of types of journals. I would say college, high school level journals are most common, conferences, competitions, and depends a little bit on the research you do in terms of what you end up with. So then you asked a question about results for UK European universities. It's a good question. I would say, yeah, most of our students do apply to US universities, but I think we had 6 students at Oxford last year. So a lot of students also apply to Oxbridge or LSE, these characters in the UK, and they tend to do really well. So particularly Oxford and Cambridge, we have a lot of students who end up there as well. This is our last admission cycle. We actually need to update this with our most recent admission cycle, which is like, I think even honestly more impressive. But students tend to do really well essentially in their admission process. We found that they're about 4 times, I think it's like 4.1 times more likely than journal will be accepted into a top, top there is just that's just a kind of top 10 ranking. And comparing our admission rate with the admission rate that the school shares. So I think in general, the thing to take away from this is that the students we bring onto the program are really great. They tend to do really well in the admission process. And also what we have seen is I think research can be valuable, especially if it's in line with your existing kind of background. Admission officers tend, I think, to see that positively. Recently, there was a stat from UPenn that came out from the admission offices that they had 26% of their student body did research in high school. And I think if you get rid of athletes, you assume they do research less. I think that number is actually closer to like 35% of the student body did research in high school. So about a third of students. Here's again that application process, which is again like kind of a multi-week process of us interviewing you, getting a sense if we think you're a good fit for the program, and then if so, making an offer. And then here's just some quick timeline related stuff there. The aid process is a little bit longer because we're spending a little bit more time. It's it's just a slightly longer process, but similar in general. And then mentor matching process, I think similar as well. Some final things. So what are we looking in the interview process for? And feel free to take some notes here if you'd like. So we are going to be asking you questions like, first question we ask, like, please introduce yourself. We're going to ask you about your past experience doing research or doing research. You don't have to have past research experience, but what experience you have in that field. Again, we don't expect you to be, like Mark Zuckerberg in computer science, but we are looking for consistent interest. And so if you're saying, hey, I haven't taken an economics course, but here's what I've read, or here's what got me interested, that can be compelling for you. So the more specific you can be, the better. We're going to ask you about past projects you did in the interview process. So there, you're going to be best set up by thinking about specific projects that you've completed, and then talk about kind of the impact of that project and the time that you spent in. And any examples you can have of where you did independent work will, I think, support you in the admission process. So think about what independent projects you've done. Okay, so I think I'm going to wrap up here in terms of the specific steps that I shared, but I want to leave some time for some questions for you guys. And then I think we can potentially wrap up after that. So feel free to throw a question in the chat, and I can just respond as is. And again, if you want to compliment this shirt, you're more than welcome to as well. Okay, let me just look around, see if there's any. Great. Okay, so I see a few there. Yeah, so we're talking with yeah, so okay, so I see a question from Catherine. Will our mentor help us give a specific topic to concentrate our research around? So absolutely. The process is pretty iterative, I would say, Catherine. So we don't expect you to there we go. So we don't expect you to be like entering into the program, being like, this is my research question. Instead, the first 3 to 4 weeks are about you working with your mentor to identify a research topic and specifically a research question. And the mentor is going to be pretty hands-on in this process, being like, hey, like, here's the types of questions you could look at. And this is why this could work, this doesn't work, et cetera. So for sure, we'll be working with you. And I would say that's a big value out of the mentor to identify what type of research topic we can. Have you ever had a student who did the individual research program simply published? Absolutely. So it's certainly a little bit less common. I would say more students publish in the publication program because it's oriented towards, but I think it's in probably the order of like 5 to 10% of students who do the individual research program end up publishing their research as well. So it certainly happens. I see a question around commitment. So I would budget 5 to 10 hours of work per week for the program. You can definitely do things alongside it. I recommend that you do. And it's somewhat flexible. So if you need to take 1 or 2 weeks off, let's say during the summer or during the spring, we can usually accommodate that. If you're taking more time off, then that's something we'd want to address. But one of the biggest factors of success in the program is, are you able to commit to putting in time, essentially? So that's why we asked that question. And so we're looking to see that you've thought critically about how you're going to fit this in to your schedule. Okay. So I see a question around, could we do research with intersection of biology and environmental science? So absolutely. We've had a number of students who've done research at that intersection. And for specific topics, almost all topics we can cover, I would say, with over 2,000 mentors, I think it's very, very doable. Yeah, so very, very, very doable. Yeah, I see it. So if my son is a senior, is he better off aiming for the premium research program or the research scholar? If he's a senior in the fall. Yeah, so I think if you can, the publication programs for the spring cohort's probably best because it allows you to focus on a tactical, kind of a tangible outcome. And if you start in spring, you're very likely to finish and get a publication decision before the college application process. So I would recommend that program. That's actually the program I recommend for most students, but yeah, that would be my suggestion. Yeah, so I see people asking about interdisciplinary research. So that's a good question. Absolutely. So if you do interdisciplinary research, we will be working to identify a mentor that could help you guide you on both of those fields. Usually in like interdisciplinary research, I would say there's often like a dominant field. So let's say you're doing like at the intersection of gender studies and arts. Usually there's one field with a little bit more dominant. Let's say it's like art or art history, and then looking at gender. Then we focus on the mentor that's the mentor side that's more dominant in that. But they would generally be able to support you with that. Okay, so I see a few more. There's a lot of questions. So yeah, so Zara asked a question about being a bit younger. So it's interesting. Age, we don't explicitly include age as a criterion. I would say that you are going to be the interview process does not look at things like age or or like the school you go to, et cetera, as a criterion. Instead, we're going to be comparing you just head to head with other students. So as long as you are, present as you're able to do the work independently, I think, you do have a shot in the program. Yeah, so you'll have a little bit less experience than other students, so that might be a disadvantage, but, I would still go for it. Okay. So I see a question on publication. So publication process and timeline publication. So the way to think about that is that I would think of the publication program as like a 3+2 program. So 3 to 4 months of dedicated research plus 3 months of submitting to publications. Publication process is external to Lumiere. And so you submit, and then they need to go through what's called the peer review process. And the peer review process, a little bit misleading sounding, but essentially means that you are being reviewed by academics in that field. Academics are not always the fastest executors, as it turns out. And so that can sometimes take some time, but I would expect about 2 to 3 months. A good chunk of that time is you just waiting, honestly, where you've submitted, maybe like you submitting to like an essay competition or something, you're submitting and you're waiting to hear back from the program. Yeah, I see a question on changing mentors if it's not a good fit. Yeah, absolutely. So I was saying, like, I think the mentor fit is the most important part of the program. So if you start the program and you're like, this person's great, but they're just not a good fit for me for whatever reason, we're super happy to identify a new mentor, and we just need 1 to 2 weeks to do that. Cool. Yeah, so how much free time for the research do you need? So again, we expect about 5 to 10 hours of work per week, a little bit less during the school year, a little bit more during the summer. So about 5 to 10 hours of work per week, as long as you can showcase, hey, I've thought about this, critically, here's the time I would allocate. I think you should be fine in terms of time commitment. Excellent. Yeah, so it's a good question. I see some acceptance rate. Yeah, it's a good question. I think last year, again, we had about 13,000 applied, and we accepted about 2,000 students into the program. So after the interview stage, that's a good question. Actually, I don't know that number off the top of my head, but if you've gone through the interview stage, I think you're looking at, it depends a little bit if you're financial aid or non-financial aid, but probably mixed somewhere in the order of somewhere like 35 to 40%, something like that, mix across financial, non-financial aid. Okay. Yes, people, Alicia asked a question, can we stay in contact with mentors after the program? Yeah, so absolutely. A lot of people stay in contact with their mentors. I would say one of the things that a lot of students get at the end of the program is they're not guaranteed as a recommendation letter. And that's something I think about. Our research suggests about 20 or 30% of our students get a recommendation letter from their mentor at the end of the program. And so that's one great way to continue the relationship. And I really encourage doing that. We have one student, I was talking to Lynn, who's at University of Michigan right now, and she did research actually with her mentor at the University of Michigan, and they continue to do research when she was at college. So it's very, very common. I see a question on requesting a different mentor. So certainly, usually requesting a new mentor takes 1 to 2 weeks. So that would take out some time, but then you would still have total 12 weeks. So if you take out 2 weeks, you still have, like, let's say another 12 weeks to go. So don't worry about that. I see a question around the college application advice and counseling. So we're a research program. We're not a college counseling organization. So we don't there are lots of great organizations that do that. I would recommend, if you want recommendations, happy to also introduce organizations that do that. We will help you think about how to use the research in the college. So we have a lot of examples of that. So we'll give you example templates, like here's how you think about applying. Yeah, here's what you're doing. I would say, I saw a question a little bit earlier about, like, how does this program compare to other programs? What I think makes Lumiere pretty distinct is 3 things. So one is the individual nature. It's highly individual. Students end up with very specific projects. And that's why I think students tend to do better in the mission process kind of vis-a-vis other programs, because the research themselves is very individual. We are, I think the publication outcomes for Lumiere is, I think, the best from what I've seen. We have the most, by far the largest publication team of, I think, any program. And I think our connection with UCSD is a distinct one. So yeah, so there's a little bit on that. But I will say we will support you in that process. The final piece is, like, we have a lot of experience working with the mission offices. They know about us, and we'll help you think through how to represent it. So in your essays or in extracurriculars or in your activities list, etc. So that's roughly where we'll support you. But if you want, like, kind of more comprehensive support for college admission stuff, you can reach out to me and I can direct you to other possible good fits. Yeah, so Catherine asked a question, you find resources to help us with our own research. So certainly we spend a lot of time with you providing resources. We have a whole writing center that just a writing team which works with you on also the writing itself. So there we have really talented writers supporting you and editors supporting you in your research. So you have your research, you submit it to our writing office. We come back to you with pretty comprehensive edits and suggestions, and then you take another path on it, another pass on, excuse me. Yeah. Okay. I think we have we have one or 2 more questions. Anything else? I see a few questions financially. I think we've addressed most of these questions. So we do have, a really robust financial aid program, and you will have essentially applied to that in the application itself. April asked a question around, does the admission, maybe this will be my final question, does the admissions committee value personal stories and overcoming challenges somewhat Ivy League? So yes, in that if that helps us understand how you would be able to tackle research, I think that's valuable. So your ability to overcome difficulties is definitely a part of research, and that's useful. However, I would say we're a bit more like academic, frankly, and we're looking for you to be successful as a researcher. So that's the primary thing that we're looking at in our program. Okay, excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much. I think we could wrap up here, but thank you guys so much for taking some time. Really appreciate you guys coming out. Uh, and if you have any questions, feel free to send me. I'll just add my email here as well. Feel free to send me an email as well. Happy to support there. But again, I'm really, for me, research is such a big part of my life, and I'm really impressed with all of you guys for thinking about doing research. I think it says just a lot about you and your families. So hope you do research, and yeah, look forward to seeing some of you guys in the program. Okay, see y'all. Thanks, everyone. Bye.